his new book, Nile Ramsbottom, shares how he went from an Iowa farm boy to leading a company that opened publicly on NASDAQ. The road was winding, and he shares the life and business lessons that he learned along the way in his book, which we have right here, Prepare for Leadership, From Farm Boy to Times Square. Mm-hmm. So, Nile, you're a St. Louisan. You've been from St. Louis to the West Coast to Iowa. You're back here again, and you've got a book full of memories and inspiration.
Correct.
So what led you to decide to write a book in the first place?
Well, it started out just being a memoir, really, for my children and grandchildren. And then I was helping some young gentlemen about 30 years old in St. Louis start a business. And I had a rough draft with me one day when we were working on their projects, and they asked if they could read some of it, which they did, and they said, "My gosh, you've got to publish this. There's a lot of takeaway messages here." Mm-hmm. So for people like us, so that's why it got published.
Yeah, and your book is written in short chapters, short snippets,
mm-hmm.
And it's very easy to read. And I know the feedback that you've gotten has been that it's surprisingly engaging. And full of really good ideas and takeaways. But literally, your book starts off with a bang. It really engages readers from the very beginning because you tell a story that was very scary and could have changed your whole career. So tell us a little bit about that.
Correct. Well, that started when we had an unfortunate accident in the facility we were working with at the time, and there was really, it happened to be an outside contractor that didn't obey the rules that he was supposed to follow, and mm-hmm. So there was an accident, but then fortunately he survived everything and it turned out well. But I had a lot of people that day that wanted to resign mm-hmm. from that new business we had just barely begun.
Mm-hmm. And you told them?
I told them I wouldn't. I would entertain all their desires, but not that day.
So in that moment of tragedy, and you were facing a situation where you had to deal with an injured person, you had employees who were scared, who wanted to quit right then and there. Mm-hmm. How were you able to pull into that training and leadership training that you had after all these years in that moment?
Well, I'm really not sure, sir. It's a great question. I think that I was feeling the same things they were feeling, but being a leader, you can't utter those same comments, and it's, I guess the background or the training came from not doing anything really quickly. You make the wrong decisions oftentimes when you do something on the spur of the moment. Mm-hmm. So we had to see it through, and then fortunately no one resigned.
Good, and that was a takeaway from the book too, is don't make quick decisions. Reflect and react from confidence.
Correct.
Right. So why do you feel your story is different from other stories of successful business people?
Well, I think there's a lot of people have stories. All of us have stories, mm-hmm. and interesting stories. I just wanted to articulate mine because there were some successes that people say along the way, and but there's a lot of difficulties that we had to overcome as well.
Mm-hmm. And when you look back at your life, and you literally started on an Iowa farm, that's mm-hmm. how you grew up, and your life today is different from that, but you still probably share a lot of the same, you still have some of the same interests that you had
yes.
back then when you were a kid,
yes.
right? How do you see, can you envision, or did you have a vision back then? Can you go all the way back to a point in your life where you said, you know what, I want to be a successful business person, I've got a vision of how my life is going to go, and do you remember that?
Yes and no, correct, actually. I did want to just keep working hard. It's that Midwestern work ethic, I think, that you're raised with, and putting one foot in front of the other one and keep trying and not giving up, and perseverance. And I learned, and that's where the name of the book came from, Prepare. I learned that if you prepare properly, when something goes wrong, you aren't going back all the way to square one. You can continue on, and plan B oftentimes work because you're prepared.
And did you feel like you always had a drive for success?
I think so. I think I think it started as the front of the cover as the boy with the horse, and my dad bought me a 2-year-old unbroken filly, and I had to learn how to ride. I didn't know how to ride, so I got thrown off a lot. So that's where perseverance came from.
An analogy for the rest of your life right there.
Yes.
So don't go away. We're going to take a quick break. There's more coming up on STL Live. We'll be right back with Nile Ramsbottom and his book, Prepare for Leadership, From Farm Boy to Times Square, after this. Stay tuned.